the electorate are aware that they've been hoodwinked repeatedly. And I think many of them have voted for reform because there was no real serious, principled political party to vote for. They wanted to give a good kicking to Labour and the Conservatives. But I think if we can get Advance UK, this new party I've launched, if we can make the arguments that I think need to be made for a proud, independent, prosperous United Kingdom, and we can convey those arguments to the electorate, I think the electorate will ditch reform and they will back Advance UK.
Well, now that you're fired up and ready to go, let me ask.
I fired myself up.
You fired yourself up. You look like he's having a good time.
Yeah.
Do you despise Nigel Farage?
I have no animosity towards Nigel Farage whatsoever. I have no animosity to Boris Johnson whatsoever. I was a vocal critic of Boris Johnson's. I'm sure, I think I'd rather have a drink probably with Boris than with Nigel. But I think they're great guys to go out and have a beer with or whatever. But that's not the point. We are facing existential threat in this country. We are facing the end of our existence. The supranational global order, which is what has taken down our borders, which has normalized mass immigration, which has normalized illegal migration, which has normalized this country making regulations and laws which don't benefit its people but benefit other people. That supranational order has to be removed, and Farage is not the man to do it.
Is Advance UK a revenge party?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not a revenge party. What I would say to Nigel Farage is there's still time to put Ben Habib out of business, and I invite you to put me out of business. And the best way to put me out of business, Mr. Farage, is to democratise Reform UK. I've put out a fantastic constitution for Advance, which is very democratic, but still protects the party from entryism and being hijacked by, malign forces. Read my constitution, Nigel. Adopt a constitution similar to that in Reform so your members get a proper voice. And adopt the mission statement that I've set out for Advance UK. Get some great people into your party. Stop throwing patriots under a bus. Stop throwing people that have tweeted something with which you disagree 4 years ago. Stop throwing them under a bus. Become robust. Stand for the nation state of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Stand for free speech. Stand for democracy. Stand for equality before the law, which, by the way, I can explain he doesn't. Stand for these 4 basic principles, and I will vacate the field. Put me out of business.
So are you doing this to apply pressure on him?
No.
To make him do the job properly?
No.
You want to go all the way with this?
I'm going there is no point getting into a fight unless you're prepared to go all the way.
And it's been suggested that this is the Ben Habib ego party.
There's no ego. I'm 60 years old. Let me tell you about ego. I was telling you this, I think, just earlier. On the way here, a dear friend of mine was asking me, why the hell are you doing this, Ben? You're 6 years old, you got a bit of dosh, I've made money, I'm lucky, I've made money. And by the way, I didn't have a silver spoon rammed up my arse. I had a pretty humble beginning. I know I went to a private school, but my father worked his socks off to put me through private school, and I was very well aware of the many sacrifices he made for my privilege. But I have made money. I have done well in my life. I'm 60 years old, as I've said a couple of times in this interview. I don't need this. Unlike some people, actually enjoy the beach. I would like to go to the beach. I'd like to get up every morning, go to the gym, have a cafe latte, sit on a beach, wait for 6 o'clock, have a double gin and tonic, have a nice meal and go to bed. I would love that and watch Netflix from time to time. I would absolutely love that. The reason I'm on the battlefield is because I feel obliged to the British people whom I made the case for Brexit. I didn't campaign for Brexit in 2016, but I fought for it in 2019. And I feel duty-bound not to leave the battlefield until that vision is delivered. That is why I'm here. It is not a sense of ambition and ego that puts me here. It is a sense of pressure and obligation that puts me here. I feel pressure. I feel under pressure to do what I have to do. It's a sense of duty. By the way, I didn't want to lead Advance UK. I know I'm leader now, but I didn't want to lead Advance UK. I wanted Rupert Lowe to lead it. But after lengthy discussions, he decided he didn't want to be in a political party. He wanted to do his own movement.
I was going to ask you about Rupert Lowe's involvement, and because it seems clear that he's not going to join your party.
But just on the ego point, if I was egotistical, I would have been saying to Rupert, I'm going to lead it. You come in as my deputy or joint leader or whatever. No. I wanted him to be leader. I wanted to set up a party that had the ability to represent the British people, had the intellectual heft and the fearlessness to do it. That's what I wanted to do, and that's what I hope I've done. But I wanted Rupert to lead it. It's not about ego. It's about delivering for the country. And the only way, and just again on the ego point, as I've said a couple of times, the only way to deliver for the country is to get a bunch of lions together, get a bunch of Hercules together. That's not egotistical. It's when you put yourself forward as the sole guy who's going to be doing it. That's egotistical. And there's one individual who we've mentioned many, many times who is the sole guy. He doesn't surround himself with Hercules. He's the sole guy. So it's not my ego.
Well, we had Godfrey Bloom on recently, spoke very well of you, spoke very well of Rupert, and he was backing reform, to the best of my knowledge. But the final straw for him with Nigel was when he got rid of you and Rupert. He thought, well, why would you get rid of two key players? It doesn't make sense.
No, but it is the Nigel Farage dog and pony show. This is all about... So I'm going to say something which many viewers will question. I'm not even convinced Nigel ever believed in leaving the EU. I'm not convinced about it. I think he's so cunning, he realised that actually making the argument to leave the EU would give him an assured place in the European Parliament, which is a proportional representation system. And if he could represent the minority in the United Kingdom who wished to leave the EU, he could guarantee himself a place in politics for 20 years. And let me tell you, the package they give you in the EU Parliament is cushy. When I was there, the total package was worth about €500,000 a year, just to sit around doing nothing. Okay? So it's a very cushy number, being a member of Parliament there. And the reason I say say that he may never have even believed in leaving the EU is all the things that I've said already about his mercurial, unpredictable nature and his lack of political philosophy, but primarily also this, that if you believed in leaving the European Union, you really believed in it, when you won the referendum, you wouldn't have vacated the field. You would have stood your ground. That was the time when Farage should have come into his own and said, great, we've won the referendum. Now, this is what the British government needs to do to deliver. We need to do this to our constitutional system. We need to these acts of parliament. We need to deregulate this. We need to cut these taxes. Whatever. He would have then been on the front foot, energised by the fact that we've left the EU, giving his vision of what the United Kingdom should then be. But instead of doing that, instead of being enthused by the prospect of leaving the EU, he said, well, I've done my job. I'm going to retire. And then the other bit of evidence I have, which is my personal evidence, is what I've already told you earlier in this programme, that in 2020, when Brexit was being defeated by Boris Johnson through the deals that he was doing with the EU, Farage was nowhere to be seen. Why wasn't he fighting for Brexit when it was crucial to get the right deal, to get a deal that would deliver us out of the EU? He knows the deal's crap. If you look at the 2019 clips of Farage, he keeps saying the withdrawal agreement's rubbish, the withdrawal agreement's rubbish, the withdrawal agreement's rubbish, and then he goes and endorses it. Even today, Liam, he won't say that Brexit's not done. He says Brexit's done, we just haven't done it properly. I'm telling you, Brexit's not done. We are still part of the EU in many, many respects. And Starmer is able to do more damage to the UK and take us even further into the EU because we never left properly in the first place. And these battles need to be won, because we will not be a proud, independent, sovereign country with borders, with an integrated, homogeneous, settled culture, unless we can get rid of the supranational order. They're absolutely inextricably linked.
Do you think now with Advance UK, you are going to war with Farage?
I'm not going to war with Farage any more than I'm going to war with Labour or the Conservatives or, frankly, the Liberal Democrats and Green Party.
And who are you fighting for?
I am fighting for my vision, which I think is shared by the electorate, as I say, of a proud, independent, sovereign, prosperous United Kingdom. I am fighting for the nation-state of Great Britain and Northern Ireland in all its parts and for all its people. I am fighting for the recognition that we are constitutionally a Christian country. I'm fighting for freedom of speech, which is the cornerstone of democracy and without which we will not be able to progress as a civilization. When you dumb down freedom of speech, you make it impossible for us to have debates about the salient issues that challenge the country. And we can talk about Tommy Robinson in due course, but he's been championing, as we all know, as viewers will all know, the fight against the gangs for many years before other people were, on that battle pitch. And he was shut down. He was cancelled because it was an uncomfortable conversation for the nation to have. And because freedom of speech was shut down, the government and the other institutions that govern us didn't do the right thing by the victims. Freedom of speech is crucial in order to be able to govern our country for its betterment.
How would you handle the new inquiry?
The national inquiry that
Starmer's going to reopen or redo.
Yeah. So
how would you handle that?
Truth be told, fine, we can have the inquiry. Truth be told, I don't think there's an inquiry is needed. What I think is needed is a branch of law enforcement to be established to identify the perpetrators and the accomplices in the perpetration of those crimes and arrest them, charge them, and incarcerate them. An inquiry, I think, will be used. I'm convinced will be used by the government to cover it all up again. Inquiries are a great way to chuck stuff into the long grass and then tell the British people, well, we looked at it, there was nothing to see there. Like the inquiry into the Iraq War. How could any sane individual think that the Iraq War was justified? And yet the inquiry which took place afterwards found no wrongdoing by the Blair government. He lied to us. The Prime Minister lied to us about weapons of mass destruction. We went to war. Many of the problems we face in this country today, many of the problems faced in the Middle East are because of the 2003 intervention in Iraq. It was an illegal war. There was no justification for it. Tony Blair should have gone to prison. And yet the inquiry hushed it up. So I think the inquiry is a red herring. We know rape took place. We know young white girls were targeted. We know that law enforcement, community services, health services, educational establishments all knew and didn't do anything about it. We know there's been a massive cover-up. We know that. So why are we doing an inquiry? Get a dedicated, and I say dedicated because you need to create a law enforcement unit that itself isn't hijacked by the forces that hijacked all those other institutions. Create a dedicated law enforcement unit to investigate what the hell went on, who did it, arrest the bastards.
Send them to jail, hold them accountable.
Yeah.
Totally agree. How are you going to win the hearts of the working class? I think they're the ones that feel like they've been forgotten and also promised the world, and then slowly but surely they're realising they're being forgotten again.
Yeah. So it's critical that any government represents the people, because if you don't understand as a governor, as a member of the government, that it is the working and middle classes who are the majority of the people, and you should be making laws and passing fiscal programs and whatever, which are for their betterment. If you don't get that, that means you're in opposition to the people. And that means we're not living in a proper democracy. And that's what we've had a lot of over the last 30 years. That's what I mean by the supranational order. They have stood against the working and middle classes of the United Kingdom. The supranational order stands against the people of the United Kingdom. It doesn't see British citizens as being important. That's why we have mass immigration. Because if you're part of the supranational order, you see all of humanity as being equal. And that means citizenry doesn't matter, which is why people like Starmer, who completely buy into the supranational order, being part of the EU, they love all that stuff. That's why they don't see any problem with immigration. That's why they're incapable of stopping illegal migration, because they don't think your rights, Liam, as a British citizen, are any greater than the rights of any other human being in the world. And so you've got to, as a matter of principle, understand that you have to represent the working and middle classes if you're going to be in politics in a democracy. And you've got to represent your country. Citizenry is critical. It's got to be at the heart of your understanding of where your obligations are. If you don't understand that you're obliged to your citizens, you understand nothing. So that's my philosophy about why I should represent the working and middle classes.
What have you got in common with them?
What have I got in common? A love of the country. I don't think I need to have walked the walk that they've walked in order to have the same love of the country, to understand what's required to be done in order to save the country. I have a deep love of this country. If you were, I know I'm half Pakistani, my skin is brown, but if you were to cut my veins, I think I would bleed red, white and blue. And that's it. And can I just make a distinction, by the way? When I say working class, I mean working class. I don't mean people who are playing the benefit system. You know, I think we've got to be clear. Starmer makes the mistake of thinking that when he represents, you know, and there are a lot of people who are on benefits, shouldn't be on benefits. He thinks when he's representing them, he's representing the working class. He's not. The working class are people who are working, who want to work. And it's critical for the prosperity of the country that the working class do well. I mean, if you haven't got the ability for the working class, just let's do economics for a second. If the working class can't, through their own endeavours, move through the social stratas, enrich themselves and make sure that their children have a future that, if they can't have aspiration, if they can't wake up every morning thinking the future is bright, the future for their children is bright, they won't work. They'll be dumbed down into submission. And that's what's happening with the British people. And if we're all dumbed down, if the working middle classes are dumbed down into submission, the economy of the United Kingdom will fail. And that's where we're at. And we'll all fail. Even people who are at the top, the top 1%, the top 2% of the wealth in this country, they will suffer. The working middle class have to do well. The country has to do well for the rich to do well. We're all in this together.
Would you say you were streetwise?
I'm probably naive.
That is the best answer I've ever heard from a politician ever. And I'm going to put that on record now. Do you know why?
Why?
You didn't try and bullshit me.
Yeah.
That was a real nice answer. And if people don't appreciate that honesty, then they're missing a trick, because we're sick of being lied to. So, and that follows on nicely to my next question that I've got in mind. So, by your own admission, you've not been brought up on the streets on a rough council estate, potentially getting jumped on the street corner, getting a glass shoved in your face in the local pub, like living in
No, I haven't done
absolute poverty and just a horrible way of life that you're born into. You can't help, and you've got to deal with what surrounds you. Very tough. And if you haven't been born into that, you can't understand it, and you can't be blamed for not understanding it. So here's the thing: by your own admission, you're not streetwise. Would you employ or take on or recruit an advisor that was politically savvy and streetwise, so you get to see the world through their eyes?
Of course, you have to. You have to understand it as best you can.
But does anybody else do that?
Well, I don't know whether they do or not.
I've not seen it.
No, but that's why I say you need a team of Hercules. That's why I don't. We haven't talked about the structure of my party, but you have the members. I'll just briefly talk about the structure of this new party. So we have the members, but above the members, elected by the members, we have something called a college. And the college includes people who are not taking a shilling from the party, so that they're in it because they believe in it. A lot of political interests are skewed by taking money from parties or from through their elected office or whatever. The college will be people who are not paid by the party, do not hold office. They're just there because they are these brave, capable, fearless people that we need in order to keep the party philosophically, on the straight and narrow, and that the leadership and the executive actually do what they're meant to be doing. And that body of people will work with the leadership to create the policies that are required in order to deliver our vision, and then the acts of parliament, etc., that need to be drafted in order to enact it. That body of people will be drawn on from all parts of the United Kingdom. And so, I mean, for example, I don't think I'm breaching your confidence, because this is all going to be made public. But David Rhodes is a member of our college, and Paul Thorpe is a member of our college. I mean, Paul, I think, would to any individual looks, feels, and behaves like a working class guy. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter to me, which side of the tracks you came from. What matters to me is that you're bright, capable, hardworking, committed to this. This is for the college. Committed to this country, share the vision that we share in the party, and you're fearless. That's what I want.
Let's talk about a few policies
Yeah.
for Advanced UK. So have you got a migration policy?
So the policies are going to be made once we have the whole college up and running. We haven't made policies yet, okay? This is something that, again, I think Reform gets slightly wrong because they just come out with policies without having discussed it with anyone. But I can tell you roughly what our migration policy would be, if you're interested.
People are sick of migration. This is what they want to hear.
Yeah, okay, so there are two aspects to migration. There's mass legal migration, and then there's illegal migration. So as far as mass legal migration is concerned, the first thing that an incoming government needs to do, the first thing, and it can be done instantly, is to have a moratorium on indefinite leave to remain and on the granting of British citizenship. Because we don't actually, I'm sure the frank, honest admission from government, if it were to admit it, is that we don't know how many people are in this country from abroad. We don't really have a handle on it. And the presumption of being given the right to stay and the presumption even of getting a British passport is that, you know, if you've been here long enough, you get it. And if that presumption continues, the country will cease to look, feel and behave like a British organism. It will become part of this morass of globalism, which is a nothing. It's a non-state. But I think the first step is a moratorium on indefinite leave to remain and British citizenship. So that means that you can then use the time that you've created to identify who shouldn't be here and make sure that they leave, number one. Number two, you need to make a clear gap between what you can get on benefits and what the working class earn. And at the moment, the gap isn't big enough. We've got 7.7 million people on universal credit, surviving, 3 million of whom aren't even looking for a job, claiming mental health issues, 1.5 million of whom are looking for a job and surviving on universal credit, and the rest of them are working but surviving on a top-up of universal credit. We've got to enrich that class of people through work. They need to be promoted into the workforce. And the way you do that is by cutting taxes on the working and middle classes, so it's more attractive to work. But also you have to take benefits away. There has to be some tough love. You've got to cut our benefits bill back because we are, apart from anything else, we're spending so much money we won't survive as a country. Over £300 billion a year being spent on benefits. Starmer couldn't cut £5 billion the other day. That's 1.6% of the benefits bill. He couldn't cut 1.6%. And we've got over 300 billion bill that needs to be cut back. If you cut the benefits that an individual gets and so that it's not that attractive to be on benefits, and you cut taxes, the gap between what you get on benefits and what you earn gets bigger. So you work. Are you with me? You choose to work. If you choose to work, this nonsense narrative that we need to bring in foreigners in order to do jobs that Brits don't do disappears. Bringing in cheap, unskilled labour, that argument disappears. So you would automatically start fixing the economic organism and getting Brits into work, and the need for foreigners would diminish, number one. Number two, we should set a minimum wage for anyone coming into this country to be given a visa. And at the moment, the minimum wage is set at £38,000 per annum. The median wage in this country is about £33,000. We need to take that up to a figure of £80,000 or thereabouts, so that you have to be in the top 5% of earners in the UK in order to qualify to come to this country to work. The other thing that you need to do, and that, by the way, will force wages up. There will be a period of inflation in the UK as wages rise because we haven't got the foreign, cheap, unskilled labour that we were relying on because we forced the minimum wage up that they have to earn to justify being given a visa.
Kind of a score system to make sure that they actually contribute towards the economy as opposed to suck from it.
Yeah, effectively. I mean, at the moment, what we've got is...
I think we'd all like that in place.
Yeah, so what we've got at the moment is people coming in, illegal migrants, you know, going on bicycles, doing Deliveroo work or whatever it is, basically doing work probably below the legal requirements for a minimum wage in this country and making it impossible for British people. The wages go so low that why would you work? Because you can get that on benefits. Are you with me?
Mm-hmm.
Why would you break your back on a Deliveroo bike for 12 hours a day when you can get the same amount of money on benefits? So you've got to the extent that you have immigration, it's got to be of people who are really well educated, who add something to British society. I see no benefit in a Deliveroo cycle rider for the British economy. I see no benefit. None. There should be no dependents coming with them when they come on a work visa or for university. At the moment, you can bring your whole flipping family with you. That's got to stop. You've got to prohibit anyone who's not British getting benefits. There are 1.5 million foreigners in this country taking benefits. That's absolutely crazy. Of course, that's going to have a pull on people from abroad into the country. So that's a handful of policies that you could use to stop mass legal migration. Then as far as illegal migration is concerned, there's got to be the first thing you've got to do is you've got to repeal the Human Rights Act, which Tony Blair put in place. You've got to get rid of the European Convention of Human Rights, which is now serving, as I say, to set aside the interests of British citizens and are serving foreigners. Actually, when you couple the Human Rights Act with the Equalities Act, which is anything but creating an equal society, the Equalities Act basically requires progressive discrimination in favor of ethnic minorities and other minorities. When you couple progressive discrimination with the Human Rights Act, which basically sets aside the importance of being a British citizen because all human beings are absolutely equal in all respects, progressive discrimination coupled with this and mass migration means that British citizens go down to the back of the queue. Are you with me? So you've got to get rid of the Equalities Act. You've got to get rid of the Human Rights Act. And then having done that, you have to rediscover the very old-fashioned, quaint notion that in order to have borders that work, they need to be physically enforced. Everyone talks about illegal migration through the prism of deportation. They all say, well, we need to be able to deport them. Of course, you need to be able to deport them. But there's a stage before they even get to your country, which is we need a dedicated force in the Channel, which will intercept these boats and send them back to France. These people are not fleeing war-torn countries. And even if they were, they don't have a right to come to this country illegally. Anyone crossing the Channel to come to this country is coming in illegally. So they need to be stopped. If you try and cross the border just about in any other sane country in the world without having the requisite right to do so, you will probably have a gun pointed at you. The Poles do it to the Belarusians. They built a fence and they put the Polish army behind it. And they will shoot if you try and cross the border.
To kill.
To kill or maybe warn or whatever, but they've put the army there and they're armed, And so the would-be illegal migrants trying to get into Poland know what they're going to meet. And we've got to discover that. It's a physical thing. And then if they do get through and onto UK shores, then they need to be arrested. They need to be detained in facilities for detainment. And then they need to be deported. And if they're countries that they come from where we don't have a deportation agreement, then those countries need to have aid removed if we're giving them aid, or we need to cease trading with them or impose tariffs on them and take actions against countries that won't take back their own people. So that's how I would deal with illegal migration. Does that answer the question? I mean, so we don't have a policy yet in the party, but I suspect that's the kind of policy that we would come out with.
I was interested in how you would distribute benefits, or if you would distribute benefits to migrants.
None. No, they have to be in prison. We have to understand that they're called illegal migrants because they've broken the law to come into the country.
Yeah, how can that be so hard for people to fathom?
I don't know.
Because it seems to be a real problem to get into people's heads.
Well, I say I don't know. I do know. The Human Rights Act that Tony Blair put in place is the embodiment of the European Convention of Human Rights in British law. So they took the ECHR and they put it into British law and they made the European Court of Human Rights the supreme judicial body, a foreign court, the supreme judicial body for human rights in this country. Now, we had a very fine understanding already in 1996, 1997, before Blair came to office. We had a very fine understanding and a perfectly established set of rules and regulations which collectively assured us all our human rights. What those laws before 1997 didn't do was set aside what it means to be British. We all knew that if you had a British passport, you had privileges. It was the best passport to have in the world, perhaps. When the Human Rights Act came in, it basically said all humanity is equal. It set aside being a British citizen. Are you with me, Liam? Mm-hmm. So it was really pernicious. And when you set aside what it means to be a British citizen, it's a hop and a skip to being unable to enforce your borders because all people are equal. So why the hell would you enforce how dare you enforce your borders? These people have every bloody right to be here, just as much right as British citizens do under the Human Rights Act. I'm not saying that. That's what the Human Rights Act dictates. So the government's been hijacked by it. It can't get its head round. And so when people say, you would have heard this said, what does it mean to being British? Come on, you guys all bang on about being what it means to be British. Well, what does it mean? And then the kind of answers you get nowadays are codified. They're codified from the Human Rights Act. They've lost a connection with our cultural roots. They've been set aside by the codification, European law, in our body of law. So I'll tell you how I know I'm British. You asked me, why the hell do I feel the way I feel? I know I'm British because I feel stirred when I think about Nelson's victory at Trafalgar. I feel stirred when I think about the fortitude that we showed in World War I and World War II, that the sacrifices we made in order to protect our constitution, our culture, and our liberty. I'm proud of the British Empire. I'm proud. I grew up in as I said, I was born in post-imperial British India, and it was a great place to be. I'm proud of the British Empire. When I was brought up, I don't know, you are younger than me, and you may not have had these. Did you ever read Commando mags?
No.
Do you know what I mean by a Commando mag?
I was reading different mags when I was younger.
No, this is at the age of 12 or 13.
That's what I mean.
Really? Oh, my God. Okay.
I had to grow up quick.
But anyway, we had black and white mags called Commando mags. They were sort of little things, and they were all about killing Nazis, the Englanders killing Nazis. And so I just grew up knowing that this country, it's the best country. It may not be the greatest country. It may not be the most powerful. It was the best country. It was the most powerful, and it was the greatest. And that's the other thing I reject, by the way. People say, oh, it's impossible for us to survive outside the EU. We simply don't have all the resources that's required to do it. We bloody well did it for centuries. We were powerful. And I want a resurgent United Kingdom. I want a powerful United Kingdom. I want a United Kingdom which, frankly, when it gets upset, will scare the rest of the world. I want to be like the US. Why not? Why can't we be like that? Why do we have to accept that we're going to be second best all the time? We hear the expression managed decline. We're not even experiencing managed decline. We're just experiencing decline, rapid decline.
Free falling.
Free falling, yeah. So, I reject all of that. And so coming back to the point, we all knew what being British meant. It didn't have to be defined for us. We knew it. It was in our system. But the codification of human rights and all the subsequent legislation that's come with it has removed what it means to be British. And in fact, you are now classified as far right if you think of yourself as British. I want to talk about right and left in a second. I think it's a really important discussion to have because before we came on, you mentioned, right wing and right wing. Can I have that discussion now? Mm-hmm. There's no such thing as right wing. It's a misapplication of a political term. It's a convenient term coined by those people who wish to rubbish those of us who believe in our country. It's very convenient. So the basic argument goes, oh, you're anti-immigration, so you're anti all these poor people who deserve our protection. Again, this kind of codified thinking coming through from European law. And therefore, you're an awful human being, you're right-wing. And when they say that you're right-wing, effectively, they do it so that they can then say, if you're a fervent believer in your country, if you wear the Union flag, if you bleed red, white and blue, or the St. George's flag, or you're far right. Because they want to discredit you. They want to make you an extreme. They want to put you on a part of the political spectrum, any part of the political spectrum, just so they can rubbish you. It's designed to rubbish you. I'm not on a political spectrum. I hope this has come across to viewers. I'm not on a political spectrum. I believe in making policies for a proud, independent, prosperous, united kingdom in all its parts and all its people. That does not make me right-wing. Those people who want to govern for the global good, who want to be part of the supranational order, who keep saying things like, and you would have heard it a million times, oh, we can't do that because that breaches international law. Oh, we can't do that because, our obligations under this treaty or that treaty prohibit us from doing it. I say to hell with all of that. That I reject that. That is the end of the United Kingdom. That set of beliefs is the end of the I believe that we should ditch the supranational institutions to a very significant extent. We should rip international law out of the body of domestic law, dissolve all the quangos that we've created, which has taken power away from Parliament and accountability from Parliament and invested it in bureaucrats like the Electoral Commission, Ofcom, the OBR. All these bodies serve to dilute, and the Bank of England, by the way, they serve to dilute our democracy. What we want are those bastards in Parliament wholly responsible for governing us, so that when they screw up, we know who screwed up and we can change them. And I'm part of that. But that's not right-wing.
It's the common sense wing.
It's the common sense wing. And what does the party stand for? Nation state, freedom of speech, democracy and equality under the law. How is that right-wing? Every government of any political hue should buy into those 4 mission statements.
Well, it's right-wing because it's not communism.
Because it's not communism. Starmer is anti-British. Starmer is anti-British. Now, I've been on many shows and I've said that, and people roll their eyes at me and they say, why do you say he's anti-British?
Even Ray Charles can see that.
Yeah, absolutely. He's anti-British. He wants to take us back into the EU. He's taking our military back in. When he talks about military cooperation, Liam, what he means is us joining the European Defence Union so that we will be under the control of Brussels. We won't have an independent military. When he talks about making it easier for us to trade with the EU, what he's doing is adopting EU laws and regulations which will be adjudicated by the EU. He's stripping power away from the United Kingdom. When he talks about letting the youth of the European Union come to the United Kingdom more easily, he's talking about freedom of movement. He's talking about taking down our borders. And
he's a dangerous man.
Oh, they're very dangerous. They are the damage they've done in 6 months of government is vast.